Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Unwelcome Access Podcast. My name is Ross Edelstein, and what you're looking on the screen has nothing really to do with assistive technology. It's just an image I like. Um, it's at a park with a lightning struck tree that is almost hollowed out in the foreground, with a bunch of lush spring grass on the ground, buds coming up on the trees in the background, including a very pink tree sort of to the right of the stump that's sort of in the center of this photo. This is our assistive technology primer, and really it is a primer. I'm not going to get too much into things, and I'm hoping to make this into a bit of a series, in fact, because there's a lot to be said about assistive technology, a lot of different assistive technologies that exist, and ideally, I'd like to bring in people who are experts on different types to talk about them. That said, I do know a thing or two about a thing or two, and I did take a course on assistive technology earlier in my doctorate. So, that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it with story time with Ross. This is my usual story time image, me driving a train, looking like I'm about to stab somebody, but I'm having the time of my life. That said, I am going to tell you a little bit about my history with assistive technology here as opposed to usually one instance. I'm autistic, as I've mentioned before, and if you're new, I'm autistic. Go watch the intro video for the channel. That being said, one of the presentations of my autism is a specific learning disability called dysgraphia. Future editor Ross is going to go ahead and put on the screen the way that it's spelled in that red bar below Storytime with Ross. But dysgraphia is the learning disability about physically writing. It also has to do a lot with fine motor skills in general, but it's mostly around writing as it comes out. And it's not uncommon for autistic people to have this too. It was to the point that despite getting handwriting therapy, I really needed non written ways to write. And by that, I mean specifically having like computers. So at first I did use things like pencil grips, which for a lot of people are the support. Then in middle school I was given an Alpha Smart, which is, and I might throw this up in post, I might not. It's essentially a keyboard with 3 lines of text that you can read, and it's only text in like an old school LCD panel. For you youths who don't know what that is, imagine like the highway dot boards, but for computers, and or like a calculator, and not the graphing calculators. And you have exactly 8 files of only text, no formatting. I hated it. Then high school comes around, and the main reason I had the Alpha Smart in middle school was because middle schoolers and computers in about 2008, 2009, not exactly something that everybody was expected to be able to use, and they couldn't really provide one. High school, they finally relented and I could bring my own most of the time. Except I got caught playing games after I was done with tests or assignments or whatever. And it's not, oh, I'm going in and playing, World of Warcraft on school property. I was playing solitaire in the same way that someone might doodle or might, read a book. But at the time, it's 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. We're talking about a world where autism is still a schoolyard slur in most of the country. It still is in some cases, but that's for the autism episode. But we have a massive sort of misunderstanding of neurodiversity, and particularly ADHD and autism combining. And so the fact that it was keeping me stimulated properly and not disrupting anyone because I was actively putting myself in places where I wasn't going to distract people didn't come through. And so despite it being a legally mandated support under the IEP, it kept getting taken away. It's not uncommon. Thankfully, I usually had something, whether it was a school computer or whatever, to do the work on and could use it at home and was allowed, at the very least, to turn in things that were like papers and whatnot electronically, even when others couldn't. Then I graduated and was thrown into undergrad. Now, for all of my higher education, I've been able to get a note stating, yes, Ross is autistic. Please let him be autistic and have his computer. By the end of undergrad, all my professors, technically at first I was supposed to go to a testing room. We'll talk about that in special education as an episode, but most but the entire time I was there, professors were much cooler about it. Sort of were like, okay, you can just sit at the front and let us watch you. Because again, I'm just trying to use something that helps me get through the day. And by the time I was in my master's, I stopped using the accommodation because, lo and behold, once they treat you like adults and you can use the tools that you need, you don't need the special accommodation for that tool. And I'm going to end this with really my one story of somebody actively denying me. And that was for, funnily enough, the museum studies course I took in undergrad. The professor was of the older cloth, we'll say. The kind of professor who really should have retired about 10 years ago, but had tenure and was phoning it in. And despite me giving the note, despite me providing the note, tried to say, oh, well, we don't do that in my classroom anyway. So I was very petty and I took notes her way, aka written, and then sent an email that night. I tried your way, but as okay, so that I just a peek behind the curtain. This is my fourth podcast that I've done on the day of recording. Um, my microphone cable has been with me for a while. The microphone's perfectly fine. Blue Yeti. The cable, though, was not having it and finally died on me. So I am now on my new cable that I got from Buc-ee's when I was in Florida. Anyway, let's move on. So let's talk about what is assistive technology. So this is another photo from the same park as the title photo, but looking at a river flowing through the park, sort of at the bottom of the image, under a stone arch bridge, with another bridge sort of in the background with various blooming trees all around the river. Assistive technology is less complex than most people think it is. In fact, that is one of the core things that I learned during the course I took, which is you don't have to have assistive technology that's super complex and out there. So the photo here is also in a park. It's of a pair of CSX locomotives pulling a large freight train. It's got some nice smoke coming off the top of it, and you've got trees also blooming and grass sort of off the right of way. Let's define assistive technology, though. It is any device, and this is my definition, any device or piece of equipment that is used to allow a disabled person to do something that would otherwise be difficult or impossible. I bring this up because assistive technology doesn't necessarily mean that somebody can't do something. And really, it doesn't mean that it has to be a certain thing. But some key points as well. It can be high, medium, low tech in cost. And we'll get into that in a moment, but people often think of assistive technology as things like the fancy eye tracking equipment, or say Stephen Hawking's speech device. But there's a lot of, or say adaptive controllers. There is a lot of assistive technology that is not anything like that. And fancy gadgets are not the only thing that exist, right? Um, but they are a big part of it too. The other big thing is that it's not a part of the built environment. Asterisk, there are things that can be in the built environment, but it's sort of one of the core parts is that we're not really looking at, say, a ramp. Technically, a ramp is a simple machine, it's a technology, but it's not assistive technology in the sense that it is something that an individual brings to bear to solve a problem. Built environment stuff, and I'm probably going to do an episode soon on built environment. That's intended as part of that sort of this helps as many people as possible. Assistive technology is really, we're looking at one person, one set of needs. Where can we help there? So it is a spectrum. And I have a chart here that I made. So this isn't a formal chart at all. This is just something I threw together in like 30 seconds in Photoshop. But all of these dots here, they're gold on the outside and purple on the inside. Just imagine that that represents some piece of assistive technology, just any random doodad. And on the x-axis, going left to right at the bottom of the graph, you have increasing cost with a plus sign on the right indicating that as you go to the right, it increases. But in the same way, on the y-axis, going up and down, we have increasing complexity with a similar plus sign at the top of that indicating that it's increasing. I bring this up and show this because there are dots all over. There is one that's sort of far to the left and near the bottom, which is low cost and low complexity. There's high complexity and low cost options. There's high cost and low complexity options, and there's some that are both, and plenty that are in between. Really, when we're looking at assistive technology, it is this spectrum. It's this wide range of what is the specific thing doing. And I'll have plenty of examples later, but I want to start with talking about low-tech assistive technology. This is a random image I just pulled off the internet. It was from an online store selling these things. I didn't want to, because I don't know the store. I know the product generally, but I didn't want to specifically say this store deserves your money. That said, this is for educational purposes. So that said, I have an image here with two pencils with the sort of 3D plastic molded grips so that somebody can hold the pencil and somebody using that grip to hold the pencil. And they're in a variety of colors arrayed around the pencil itself. But it's a good example of low-tech assistive technologies. Usually low-tech assistive technology, and again, these are all general guidelines. There's no hard and fast rules or definitions on any of this. Low-tech assistive technology usually is handling solved or commonly encountered support needs, but not always. And usually these things are relatively easy to find. They're usually less expensive, not always. And we'll have some examples of that in a bit. They also usually require a lot less technical knowledge to implement them, and that's why I have the example of the pencil grip here. You just buy it from the store, put it on the pencil. It's pretty straightforward what that's doing. These are, and again, this is illustrative. There, we'll come back to this, but low-tech stuff is often overlooked in the public consciousness looking at assistive technology, and not usually thought of as technology, in the same way that a lot of people do not think of ramps or pulleys as technology. Then we have high-tech assistive technology. This image is from, let me just pull up my notes, North Canton Children's Hospital in Ohio. This PowerPoint has a lot of things that I did not have photos of myself, so do keep that in mind. I will be saying who I got the images from. Um, and they will also be in the slide notes in the that I upload to Patreon. Now, just as a heads up, that's not paid for at all. It's just an easier place to upload all of this right now until I get a website back up and running that I can upload these documents. But it also gets you to go to my Patreon. That said, the assistive technology shown in this image is a teenage girl wearing a mask showing off a cochlear implant. And that has a circle on the side of her head in white with a wire coming down to a receiver half circle on her ear. Now, my youngest sibling is deaf, lowercase d. That will be a discussion for another day, probably a cochlear implant episode as well, fully going into it, and has a cochlear implant as well. They are medical technology of the highest grade. It's literal brain surgery. You're literally being turned into a cyborg. That is, of course, a overgeneralization. That's why we're doing an episode on it later. That said, these things usually require more technical skills to operate. This often means that often these are newer solutions to issues, and but not always. Cochlear implants have been around since, I believe, the 80s or 90s. That separate episode, I'll look that up later. And there's a lot of high-tech stuff that is iterations on other solutions. They're also usually more expensive. This isn't always the case, but usually the higher the tech, the more complex, and again, the more technical skills that the person either operating it needs to develop, or the person who is helping that technology get implemented needs to have. So, for example, there are things that are basically you grab out of the box that are high tech. We'll see some examples of that. But you also have things that are, say, but it also, again, is more about what skill level does somebody have and need to operate this. And more than that, both high and low tech are very generalized vibes based designations. We can't really say for certain that something is high, something is low tech. Sure, there are obvious examples, pencil grip. But we're going to get into some examples that might not easily fit within that. And again, there's also the matter of cost. Cost is something that not everything is super expensive. Sometimes things are paid for by insurance. Sometimes things are, you have to get this yourself. I use noise canceling earbuds that are $200 a pop because they are necessary assistive technology for me. And that has to come out of my own pocket. That being said, assistive technology doesn't always look like assistive technology. So on the left, both of these are ways that people who I know are neurodivergent. Shout out to, for the left image, Discord user Sindane, and on the right, Discord user Totally Gatsby, for their support on this. Really do appreciate your throwing things in for this. I'm one of the common assistive technologies, especially for neurodivergent people and autistic ADHD, is Planner. I can't tell you how many times I was told to use planners in undergrad and not undergrad, high school, and the ways that I was told to do it just didn't work for me. And so they tried planner but slightly different options. And on the left we have Sindane's image, as I mentioned, and that's a 2025 planner in Polish. It looks like I'm pretty sure Polish. I don't know why. I'm pretty sure I know it's Polish. Anyway, like podcast delirium even setting in massively. Um, but the 2025 sort of pre-regimented planner, and as you can even see, it has hourly updates. So you can put in your whole schedule. Then you have the opposite sort of style of assistive technology planner, which is even simpler. It's a dot notebook with amazing handwriting. Very impressed. Totally Gatsby. Much better than mine. And throwing this is actually a symbol of what they do for theirs. I just realized. I was just I didn't even realize that they had done this for me. Kudos. That said, um, it shows their how they set it up, what and sort of the free-form style. I use OneNote, and that's a electronic version of it. But neither of these things not really scream this is an assistive technology for this person, despite the fact that for me, at the very least, I know that OneNote is my assistive technology. In fact, I started using OneNote for note taking because I saw that it was useful for that purpose. And so assistive technology doesn't always have to look like it. It doesn't have to be, this is clearly something that was developed for disabled people to use. And in a lot of cases, assistive technology doesn't start as assistive technology. And we have recursion here as I show you a photo of my laptop screen from yesterday as I was the 20th, as I was putting together this PowerPoint. It doesn't always start as assistive technology. My laptop is my assistive technology for most things. I live and die by this thing. When it died at the start of this year, which actually, for those of you who have been my patrons on Patreon since that I was about to start recording after I got back from the trip I did right at the start of the year and my laptop died. It broke me for like 2 weeks until I got the new one. This is a $4,000 Alienware laptop that is really intended for gaming. For me, my entire life, my ability to do everything is on this. My ability to communicate with the world around me and even make, again, through things like the podcast. That's on here. I cannot stress enough that even though this is, again, it looks like just a laptop. But like a lot of assistive technology that isn't sort of originally intended to be assistive technology, it is a core part of what makes me able to participate in the world around us. So I want to go ahead and hit on a point here. For a lot of thinking about assistive technology, it's a very broad topic. sort of like travel and transportation and transit. And we have here a one of Metro's new SD70s. And honestly, I really like the blue paint scheme that they have for it. But it's going through a station. I believe this is Edgebrook Station in Chicago, or just outside of Chicago, with the shiny, freshly painted locomotive in the front, and then the gallery cars behind it as it pulls into the station, with the crossing lights down. But it's a very broad topic, and we can kind of look at a few categories for it. And I'm not going to divide up the examples by this list, but you can really look at what it's trying to do, um, as sort of a better what is this assistive technology, and I'd say even better than high and low tech, although high and low tech can be a good describer within these categories. You have verbal communication. Is this assisting in a disability that affects verbal communication in some way? Whether that's straight up doing speech or providing somebody a alternate way of communicating. Um, Reading and writing. Is this helping somebody get their thoughts onto paper? Is it helping somebody to be able to read if they can't see, so on and so forth? Mobility. Does this help somebody get around? Life skills. Um, Things like, can I, put on clothes? Assistive technology for adaptive clothes is a thing. Or mentally. You saw the planners earlier that are a assistive technology, even if somebody might not be using it specifically for that purpose or knowingly. But you also have things like adaptive cookbooks, where that is assistive technology. This is not an exhaustive list, and I am sure that I will be hitting a lot of topics within this in their own episode. And hell, I might have to come back and redo some of these early episodes later on. We'll find out down the road. But I'm going to go ahead and throw this to our halftime, and we are going to go ahead and get a word from our sponsor. Wow, Future Ross, what a great ad. Or maybe there isn't one. As always, our primary sponsor is you, the viewer, over on patreon.com/unwelcomeaccess. However, this space is intentionally left open for disabled people who have a project, a business, something they want to get out there to help platform people who might not otherwise get a chance to share in this sort of format. That said, back to your regular programming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. Let's get back into it. So what I wanted to do to end this episode is really have a more fun sort of basic list of assistive technologies. Some that I have more information on. Um, and let's get into that. Um, and yeah, um, this is a more fun episode, with a lot less of the negative stuff. The image here, by the way, is at the Monticello Railroad Museum in a railway museum in Monticello, Illinois, um, with their Wabash F unit in the front of a train by their depot with people boarding, water tower rising up to the right, and the station parking lot sort of in the foreground there with the train on the left. So the first, wheelchairs. I have two different types. On the right, we have the extremely basic wheelchair. Um, Usually, this is what you might see sort of as you're at a hospital or a museum or something, and yeah, you might, be able to walk normally in short distances, but you're going to be on your feet for a long time and you can't do that. Here's a chair. Really basic sort of folding wheelchair. not this, and sort of really the bare minimum of the medical wheelchair. This is contrasted to the left by a action track chair, which is a outdoor chair. Technically, it's in a weird spot. I have had disagreements with colleagues on whether it's a wheelchair technically or not. I think it is, for certain definitions. That being said, it's a treaded wheelchair with very outdoor focused tracks, and a sort of longer distance, more comfortable seat. It has a joystick control, and having driven it just a little bit, because in this case it's a wanting to make sure that I kind of know the deal, and also because I was on an assessment um, with Indiana State Parks in this photo, which you can see the uniforms of the folks that we were with. No faces though. It is very zippy. That being said, wheelchairs, most often people think of them either, these are two, well, really, these are two ends of the spectrum of wheelchairs. You have the extremely inexpensive, highly solved, this has been around forever, and then the newer version that's really looking to get people into their world around them and focus, and not just, you know, getting to those really highly built up areas. And there's everything in between. There are some wheelchairs that can be controlled by apps, although there's stories there for another day, about the app malfunctioning and causing someone to be thrown off a stage at a some sort of disability conference. That said, wheelchairs are a great example of assistive technology, and honestly one of the ones that people don't always recognize. There are other mobility devices, though, that are assistive technology. A cane or a walker is also assistive technology for mobility and are often even simpler than the wheelchair. Pictorial communication systems. So on the left is one from, there are a number of systems that can be used with iPads. This is just one I found online. Believe I, let me double check. I might have put the, it is from Assistive. Um, iPad photos from Assistive. Um, and that is just one of the people who makes these. I cannot say anything more about it because I haven't used it. Um, but and on the right we have a communication board made by Landscape Structures, who I need to talk to about this. Actually, if you're from Landscape Structures and watching this, you know how to find me. Um, but a communication board is, or a pictorial communication system is kind of what it says on the tin. Instead of utilizing words, it utilizes pictures combined with the words. There are a lot of folks who are non-speaking, but they still can communicate. For example, and there's a lot of other reasons you might use something like this, but they're really intended primarily for autistic people who are non-speaking. It also, and basically what it does is it combines pictures that are clear about what they're portraying with the words. So somebody can communicate using this system. And for a lot of people, they might have this on an iPad, and you can load it up with any number of images, things that are important for you. And there's starting to be some, and this is one of the things that, especially when I was working at Epley, I was recommending a lot more in public spaces. So this is at a park near my house. the CSX image I had earlier is at this same park. And what this is it has pictures often related to the park. Now, this one, there are some improvements that could be made related to specific things that are there and including them. But having something like this allows somebody to communicate who might not otherwise be able to. So obviously, a non-speaking autistic person, someone who is deaf and some is trying to get something across to someone who can't sign, but also language accessibility. You might not speak English, somebody might not speak Spanish, but you can still understand the pictures and what that's saying. And there are any number, and this is another good example of you can have a high-tech version of the solution. Again, the version on the left is a iPad app, but also a low-tech solution that is expensive. That is a probably couple $1,000s of communication board. And it's going to last for a good long time. Words don't go bad, but it's relatively low tech. Anybody could use it. And at the end of the day, you can one you can also have just literally printed paper that has pictures on it with words next to it, and that's a communication device. So assistive technology can really run the gamut, and this is a good example of that. Up next, we have a video that is going to play. Voice recognition and text to speech. Let's go ahead and on the left I have a meme. Hey Siri, tell me a joke. Did you hear about the band called 1023 Megabytes? They're good, but they haven't got a gig yet. With the Leonardo DiCaprio laughing meme captioned Siri. And this meme I got from Reddit, and it was made by you/the Tangerine 101, as it says on the meme. Credit where credit's due. And on the right, I asked Google to roast me, and here's what it said.
Okay, I like your hair so much. It's embarrassing.
It wasn't a very good roast, although I don't have hair, so maybe. Um, but voice recognition and text to speech. These apps are a very good example of that and sort of doing it on both ends. But these have sort of been developing separately. You have, for a long time, there's been a lot of voice recognition for blind folks, especially my dad is a great example. He is legally blind, and his job has been computerized for a long time, and he's used a lot of voice recognition since the early days of it being really viable for getting words on paper, but also a lot of text to speech, being able to read things on a screen aloud. And there are also apps that can get text from images, or from the phone's camera and scanning something. This is a technology called optical character recognition. It's been in the works for a very long time, and it has gotten unfairly tied. Voice to voice recognition and text to speech as well has gotten unfairly tied to the AI sort of boom bubble that's been coming up. But it's been an accessibility thing for a much longer time than it's been tied into this world. And if it's going to be used for anything, this is actually a really good example of it. But these kinds of technologies are extremely useful for a number of people. There's a lot of people who might not have the best time reading, whether it's vision or dyslexia or various, or say a intellectual disability or whatever, or just not being able to focus on words on a page. And so if you provide an audio version, they can get that same information without having to worry about, am I looking like a fool, or am I missing out on something because I missed it in my reading? And so that also helps a lot with writing for folks who are maybe unable to write for whatever reason, often similar reasons to inability to read text. And I know they're also just people who are better at sort of verbalizing their words, and it makes it so that it flows easier. And these technologies developing, these are definitely high tech, but in a lot of ways, especially with voice recognition and text to speech, they are some of the least expensive ones out there because they're usually tied into, at the very minimum, your computer by itself. Now we have a picture of me with a Blage on me, sitting in a bed with my old laptop on my phone with a weighted blanket over me, and in the orange. I am looking at my fiance in this picture like I am about to. I don't know what was going on in my head there. I think I was smiling, but also evil eyes somehow. Anyway, weighted blankets. It's a heavy blanket. It's a piece of technology. It helps reduce stress for a lot of autistic people. It's not very high tech. It's actually a relatively simple thing to put together, and most people don't even have to put it together themselves. All of mine are store bought, and I've used three different ones. I'm using one right now as I'm recording this. It's a low tech piece of technology, but unfortunately, the cost is relatively high as it's kind of specialized. Now, this is the I decided to pull a meme for this one because I thought it'd be funny. Glasses. We have the anime glasses shining meme with a man pushing up glasses on the bridge of his nose with sort of blinding white light coming off of it in this photo. And it looks like it's being compressed to all hell. Um, that said, glasses are an assistive technology. They're one of the most solved assistive technologies out there. Um, Benjamin Franklin invented bifocals, for God's sake. There's a lot of assistive technology that's like this that's been around for a long time. And this is also where I throw in the fun fact that wearing glasses is an indicator of a disability, a vision disability. And at the end of the day, that vision disability is not usually thought of in a societal way like that. But you're still using a assistive technology, and at the end of the day, that assistive technology is it's one that you need. Think of Scooby Doo and Velma. How many times does Velma say, "I can't see without my glasses"? And if you're a glasses wearer in the chat, how many times have you said that? Assistive technology doesn't always have to be thought of as that. But here's one that is, and various audio assistive technology systems, assisted listening systems. In this case, the photo I chose, and it is courtesy of pulling up my notes. Why did I not write that down? It is from, gosh darn it, where is it? It was from a audio um, organization based out of Washington. I know for certain. I will get the name and add it in somewhere, probably the slide notes that I upload to Patreon. But the in this case, we have an audio loop system. It's one of many different types of assistive listening system that are out there. And in an audio loop, essentially you have a microphone that someone speaks into, and usually this is tied into a general assistive listening system. And there are a number of types. There are ones that are laser, ones that are Bluetooth, um, just a speaker as an assistive listening system. But in this case, a hearing loop amplifier, you tie it into a, a set part of that system, and there's a copper coil around the room, just a wire. And as you speak, electricity goes through that wire. And in a lot of assistive listening devices, hearing aids, cochlear implants, etc., you can switch on a mode where there's a little coil that picks up the induction current that's going around the room. And while you're in that room, it reaches out and basically pumps the audio directly into your device so that you don't have to worry about things like, is this unclear from, speaker artifacts or being at the back of the room or whatever. And these kinds of systems are high tech, they're more expensive, but for a lot of people, they are incredibly beneficial. And that's why they are more or less required in a lot of different spaces that are publicly accessible. That said, there's going to be more depth. This is definitely going to be the start of a series, and ideally, I'd like to have guests for this one. I don't know everything about all assistive technology. I took a doctoral level class, yes. That one of the things that I often say about being an expert is that I know when I don't know things, and I know when to ask for others to help me learn things. And so I'm looking for potential guests on this. If you know a guest involved with an area of assistive tech, send them my way. Love to have them on and love to be able to, talk with them about what they're doing. That said, here's just some resources and tips. And I'll include this link definitely in the um, description. But every state has an assistive technology lending library, and I have the link there for the Association or Administration for Community Living from the federal government that has that list. This is funded through the Assistive Technology Act, which, again, every state has these resources. Some of them have multiple. Sometimes you can get these through specific universities if you're involved with one. That said, try things out and figure out what works for you. Assistive technology is, at its core, a very individualized set of supports. Sure, you have things like audio loops that help a lot of people at once, but not everybody benefits from an audio loop. And always, don't assume that you need the fanciest one, right? Um, I might benefit from having a laptop that has all my life on it and is where my planner goes and all that, but not everybody will. In fact, there's a lot of people who won't and would benefit from the paper version. And if you're helping someone else out, remember that you can't force them to use a tool. You can bring a horse to water, you can't make them drink. I was really bad at using planners and planner like tools, not because I couldn't, but in part because I was forced to use them in a way that wasn't working for me. Letting someone try things out, especially if they're a kid, and figuring out what works for them is going to save a lot of time and energy and make sure that the outcome is much more aligned with what the kid needs and or whoever you're helping needs. And remember, is assistive technology is an accommodation. In most cases, if you're taking it away, you're basically it's especially if it's something like a communication device, it's like taking away someone's insulin or a service animal or their medication. It has a massive detrimental impact on someone's life. And in most cases, there's a very good reason that someone's using it, especially if it's a accommodation that's being asked for at work or at school. Remember that these are massive game changers for a lot of people. We are very fortunate to be in a world that has these things available. And one of the biggest barriers to getting them is people just not understanding. And being able to explain that, hey, this is as important for me as something that someone gets is an important thing for someone with a disability is one of the core ways that you get somebody to have that light bulb moment. Because most people, they're not trying to do an ableism. There's there are people who wake up and say, "Oh boy, I'm going to go do some ableism today." Most people aren't that. And so being able to say, "Here is how what this is exactly doing," will get through to a lot of people. That being said, looking forward to continuing this series and further podcasts. I'll see y'all in the next one.